Hi guys, welcome to the channel. In today's tutorial I'll be showing you how to cut and sew this beautiful mix match Ankara Bubu dress. If you'd like to see how I made this, please watch to the end of this tutorial. I'll be lining the Bubu dress in this tutorial, so you can decide to line or not line yours. The one I have on isn't lined, so it is all up to you. Before I start, I would like to welcome all returning subscribers. Thank you for your support, and if this is your first time coming across my video, you're welcome. Please subscribe if you're here to subscribe to this channel. Turn on the notification bell so that you'll be notified every time I upload a new video, and don't forget to like this video. For this project, I'll be using 3 yards of this mix match Ankara print. I'll be drafting on my lining since I'll be lining this, and I have folded my fabric using half of the shoulder measurements plus the sleeve length I want. My sleeve length, so I have on fold 18 inches, and I folded into 4, the front into 2 and the back into 2, and all my measurements will start from this start line, which is also my shoulder line. So on this line I'm going to impute 3 inches, and then I'm going to impute half of the shoulder measurement I'm working with, and then the rest is my sleeve length. Okay, so that's what I have, including the hemming allowance for the sleeve opening. Okay, so at that point I'm going to come down by 1.5 inches and connect it to the 3 inches point I've noted earlier. This is for the shoulder slope. From the shoulder slope line I would come down by for my sleeve opening, I'm going to come down by 9.5. I want the sleeve opening to be 8.5, so I came down by 9.5 because I'll be using 1 inch as sewing allowance. So that's what I came down by. I'm going to check what the measurement is from the shoulder line and extend it inward like this and make a straight line. So this point I'm going to impute my bust measurement here. So I'm going to impute quarter of the bust measurements I'm working with, and then I'll add extra 2.5 inches allowance. This allowance is for ease and sewing allowance. From the shoulder line I'm going to measure 16.5, which is the half length I'm working with, and then 25.5 inches, which is the hip line. So I'm taking these lines, these vertical lines. On the waistline, which is 16.5, I'm going to impute quarter of the waist measurements plus 2.5 inches allowance. On the hip I'm going to impute quarter of the hip measurements plus 2.5 inches allowance. Then I'm going to bring down the measurements I have on the hip line on the hem line of this lining. So the length of my dress is 43 inches. I'll go on and connect these points, the measurements of the bust to the measurements of the waist, then to the hip, and down to the length of the dress. So on this sleeve opening line I'm going to measure, what I have on the shoulder is 18, so I'm going to measure 17 here, removing 1 inch from what I have on the shoulder line, and then I'm going to connect it to the shoulder slope line like this. And then this angle formed here, I'm going to make a curve. So I'm going to come out by 1 inch like this and make a curve so that the armhole area, underarm area, is not straight but curved. Okay, you see how I curved it. For the neckline I'm going to take a neck width of 3.5 inches and a neck depth of 4 inches for now. I'm using 3.5 inches by 4 inches. Okay, I've made a curve. Then I'll take ½ inch at the shoulder part for the shoulder joining allowance, and then I'll connect it. After this I'll go ahead and cut this out. I'm done drafting out the dress. I'll just cut out but I won't cut out the neck line for now. I'm going to cut everything out except for the neck line. So now I'm going to use one of the linings to cut out the back piece. I'm going to place the line and cut out exactly what I have for the back piece on this part of my fabric. Okay, this other colored parts. Okay, so I've cut it out. The only difference with the lining is that the main piece has the hemming allowance of 1 inch. You can see I have extra 1 inch on my fabric. Then I'm going to now cut the neckline. So from our thumbnail, you notice that one side of the neckline is off the shoulder. It's like an off shoulder, so I'm going to do that on my lining now. So I have the linings open right side to right side. The two should be equal, because you're doing what you're doing to the front, you're doing to the back. So I'm going to complete the neckline I had before on one side, 3.5 inches by 4 inches. So I've completed the neckline now. So you decide the side you want the off shoulder to be. For me, I want it to be on the left hand side. So on this, from the center, the crease line is my center line. So I'm going to measure towards this side, half of my shoulder. After getting half of my shoulder, I came inward by 2 inches. Okay, so what it means here with the shoulder I'm working with, it means that after the 3.5 inches neck width, I've added extra 3 inches. Okay, so use your half of your shoulder so that it doesn't get too big for you if you don't want it dropping too much. So that's what I did. Half of the shoulder I'm working with is 8.5. So from that 8.5, I came inward by 2 inches. It means that on this side that I want it to be off, I have 6.5 inches. Okay, as the neck width. Do you understand? So just look at what I did and use your own neck shoulder measurement to do yours. Okay, so after measuring it, I connected it back to the neck depth. You see what I did? So I'll go ahead and cut out the neckline. Note that the two are together. So for the lining, if you're cutting on your fabric, make sure you're cutting on the right side so that you don't make mistake. Okay, so this is a lining. I can actually use any side as my front or back, but I want this to be on the left hand side. So I'm going to note this 3.5 inches on my line. You see where I'm noting the 3.5 inches, the initial neckline. So I've gone ahead to replicate my lining on this folded pattern. Okay, one piece of my line I've replicated it because I'm going to mix match the front parts. Okay, so I have everything. I've noted the waistline and the hip line on my paper, and I've opened it up so that I can cut the way I want to mix and match my Ankara fabric. So from the crease line is my center line towards the left, I've measured 3.5 inches, which was the initial neck width. Okay, so I've noted that point. I've just noted it. Okay, 3.5 inches away. Please, you'll be marking on, this is the right side of the good side of my pattern paper. So if you're marking on your fabric, mark on the good side, the right side. Okay, so that you don't make any mistake. So I've noted this point. I'm going to label my pattern so that we don't get confused. This is the good side, but this is the right hand side, this is the left hand side. I'm going to write L at the left as the left hand side so that we'll not get confused. Okay, so I'll fold it because I want everything to be visible. This is the right hand side. So on the right hand side, when you fold from the center, the crease line, I'm going to go outward by 5 inches. Okay, on the hemline. So you notice the 2 points I've noted. So take notes, pay attention to this part. So take note of the 2 points I've already marked and the points where I marked them. Now on the right hand side, I've already noted my waistline. This is my waistline. So on the right hand side, I'm going to measure 1 inch above the waistline. 1 inch above the waistline. I've noted, I wrote W there to know that is the waistline. So I'm going to go up by 1 inch and note that. Just take note of this point. Then on the left hand side, I've also noted the hip line on my pattern. Okay, so this is the hip line. I'm going to write H there as the hip. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 3 inches below the hip line. I've noted 4 points in total. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to connect the points. The one I made on the neckline, 3.5 inches, I'm going to connect it down. Okay, while the one I made on the right hand side, 1 inch above the right hand side of the waist to the 3 inch below the hip line, I've already connected it. Sorry, I didn't it wasn't recording when I connected them. Okay, so what I did is connect the 1 inch above the waist line on the right hand side to 3 inches below the hip line on the left hand side. I've connected that point. So now I'm going to connect the points 3.5 inches on the left hand side on the neckline to the 5 inches away from the center front on the right hand side. Please don't get confused, just watch what I'm doing and follow the same thing. So I'm making the markings with my pen, and after that I'll go in with the marker to make it visible so that you can see it and understand what I've explained. So I've connected all these points, and it now divides the front part into 4 parts. Okay, so I'm going to cut through the lines I've made. So when I cut them, I'm going to place each on my fabric and cut. So the parts where I'm going to cut is the part they are going to be joined back together. So I'm adding I'll be adding 0.5 inch allowance on all cut parts that will be joined together on the fabric. So when I place them, I'm going to cut and add 0.5 on all these points I've noted with 0.5. Okay, so when I add this, I'll then join them back together, and then I'll have a whole one piece for the front. So I'll just go ahead and cut my pattern. So what I'm going to do before I cut, I'm going to note the center, so that when I cut this I won't be confused. And the lower part, I also noted where would be joined to the upper parts. Just make notes to enable you know where to join to where, okay, so that you don't get confused. The same thing with the right side. I'm going to note the part that will be joined up and the part that will be joined to the center. So here are my patterns. I'm going to use them to cut the fabric for the front. So I'll decide which side to cut because I want to mix and match this. Okay, so I'll decide which part I want. The flowery part, I'll cut it on the lower side, and this other part I'll cut it at the top part. And for the left hand side, I would just alternate. So this is the left I've cut. So you see where I added my allowance. Okay, so when placing, please note that the right side of your fabric should be up, okay, so that you don't make any mistakes, so that after joining them together, everything will match with your back piece. Remember that the neckline is also the effect of the off shoulder is also on the back part. Okay, so you see my back, this pattern, you cut your fabric on the right side, then you join them. First of all, I'm going to join the top and the bottom. Okay, so you see I've joined them with the 1/2 inch. Now I have 2 pieces, the right hand side and the left hand side, which I'm also going to join together by 1/2 inch allowance. Okay, because that's what I left for it. I'm going to go to my machine and join them again. So this is it. I've joined and I've sewn it. You see that our front is now 1 piece. So we now have 1 piece for the front. So after joining them, all I'm going to do is to use this 1 inch bias velvet bias strip to cover up the seam. So the first one I'll do is to cover the horizontal line, also on both sides of the velvet. So after that, I'll do the one for the vertical line. So before I do that, what I'm going to do is to check the part of the neckline that is cut off. So I'm going to place this is how it was before I cut it off. I'm going to measure these points at the initial neck width, which is 3.5 inches. What will be cut off from there? Okay, so just note this point where our 3.5 inches for the neck width is on this side. I would measure what I have before I get to the main dress. So what I have there is 3.25, which I approximated to 3.5. So that means I have to take out 7, all right, because it's going to cross the shoulder. It's going to be like a strap on the shoulder, but I'm not going to measure just that 7 inches. I measured out 9 inches before sewing this other part. So you take 9 inches away at the top part before sewing to cover this, to run it from the top to the down part. I've also cut out my back, and I would use my lining to turn the neckline and the hemline and all these other parts. But before then, I'll work on the front part. So for the front, I've sewn the bias, and I've turned the neckline, I've notched, and I top stitch towards the lining piece. I've done the same for the hem part, and I've sewn the sides starting from this point. I closed up everywhere except um for the shoulder part. So I would notch this curve so that when I turn and iron, it will relax properly. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just notching all through, then I will turn it out and iron properly. When sewing the bias on that vertical line, don't get completely to the neckline. Leave half an inch for turning the lining, turning the neckline with the lining. Okay, so when you're sewing, don't let the bias get completely to the neckline. That way you have that half inch to turn the neckline. So that's what I did here, and you can see what I have. So you can see it. I have this bias like this part that would be going towards the back like a strap. So you can see the front, I've turned the neckline. So because I didn't sew the bias completely, I left out half an inch. That's why it didn't interfere with me turning the neckline, and this is what I have. So now I'm going to join this bias, connect it to the back part. Remember I said it's going to be like a strap. So I've turned the neckline for the back part, okay, but I left an opening where I'll pass this bias from. All right, at that 3.5 inches neck width. Okay, so if you look at my back piece, you see that I joined it at the center. That's because I was managing my fabric. Okay, I couldn't cut a full back without having this joining at the center. So if yours can cut directly, just cut without having a joining at the center back. So here, this is how it's supposed to be. So I would measure my back towards the side. I'll have the strap. I'm going to measure from my center back 3.5 inches. Okay, the same thing I did for the front. So that's where I left the open when joining my turning with the lining. Okay, so I left an opening there, about 1 inch opening. So I'm remeasuring this. Like I said, when I measured the distance I have, there is 3.25 inches. So remember, that's just for the front part, and it to go to the back, that will make it 6.5 inches. Okay, so you know this is just for the front, then I have to double it because it's going to pass to the back. So I'm going to measure this. Okay, you can see me taking my time to measure this, because if it's not accurate, it's going to have excess. Okay, it won't relax properly on the shoulder. So I'm measuring it, and note that this 6.5 inches is at the point you're concerned about is the point, the inner part of this bias. Do you see the parts I'm marking? Okay, so just watch what I'm doing. I'm going to mark this, and then I'm going to pass it in through that opening I left. Okay, I left an opening. I didn't sew this point when I was sewing the neckline, so that I can pass this. All right, so the trick here is that this point, the inner part of the bias, should be that 6.5 inches, while the outer part of the bias should be 6 inches. It should be half inch shorter. So in essence, you're placing it in a diagonal form. You're not sewing straight, so that this will relax. Remember that the shoulder is somehow curved, okay, sloped. So if you place it this way, you'll be able to get it and have it relaxed on the shoulder. So this is the tip of making it, or should I say yes, it's a tip to make sure that it relaxes properly on the shoulder. All right, so I'm pinning it. I'm just going to sew this down like this. Continue, you know, to complete the neckline. So after sewing, I would notch and top stitch towards the lining piece. So after finishing up the neckline, I will then close the hem part. So you have the front side inside the back part. You see what I'm doing? It's going to be inside like this. Then I'll sew these points, also top stitch towards the lining. I will still have it inside this way, the front side inside, and I'll close the sides. I'll close everywhere except for the shoulder. So I'm going to sew the same way I turned the front one with the lining. That's the same thing I'll do for the back one. After sewing, I'll still notch the sides, the curvy parts, and then bring it out to the right side from this open part on the shoulder. So I've joined everything. You can see what I have. I've joined everything All right, you can see everywhere is closed, and I've joined everything like this. So I would notch and then bring it out from this shoulder that is open. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm bringing out everything to the front part. So this way you see that everything is neatly turned, and it will be looking so nice. Even the back parts would also look neat. So after bringing it out, I measured what I have here. So when I measured, I noticed I didn't have up to 6.5 inches, so I went in again to bring out half an inch. Okay, so you have to measure before you close your shoulder, all right, so that if it's not enough or if it's excess, you'll be able to correct that. So I would go on and close the shoulder, and then after closing the shoulder with ½ inch, because that's what I left for it, I'll then sew the sides with 3/4 of an inch. All right, because I used 1/4 of an inch to turn with the lining. But here I'm going to attach a pocket. I want to have inner pocket, so before I close up, I'm going to cut my inner pocket. I'm noting where it's going to start from. It's going to start from the waistline, and then I'm just cutting out my pocket piece. I have my fabric. I have make sure you have about 7.5 inches for your pocket opening, and then make a curve big enough to contain your hand. Okay, and then cut. All right, so after cutting, I'm going to use this to cut the second pieces for the second pocket. So I'm going to bring this up like this and measure where I'm going to start placing, which is my waistline. Okay, on both sides. Then I'm going to bring pick a piece of the pocket parts and place them right side to right side, sew with 1/4 of an inch, and then top stitch towards the pocket side for both sides of these pocket pieces. Okay, so after doing that, after sewing, I'm going to bring them out like this. See what I have, right side, right side. Okay, then after I must have closed my shoulder, I'm then going to sew with 3/4 of an inch from here. When I get to the pocket part, I'll sew with ½ inch and then continue with 3/4 of an inch and sew down. I'll do the same thing for the other side. So I've done all that, and you can see how beautiful this is. I have my inner pockets. You can see how beautiful this dress looks. Okay, so this is what the back looks like, and when I turn to the wrong side, you can see that it's looking neat without any stitch on the back, and everything is looking very neat. Okay, so you can see what I have, and you can see the strap we have here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and notch these curved parts and iron properly so that it would relax. And this is it on how to make this beautiful mix match Bubu dress. Try yours and let me know in the comment section how yours came out. Please don't forget to like this video so that others can see it, and check out other videos I have on this channel. Until the next tutorial, bye.